All right, it's my privilege to be here with Cynthia Wrasman and Cindy Anderson. You can tell by their big smiles they like each other. They've actually worked together in business, two enormously successful entrepreneurs, and they both have compelling stories and a lot of words of wisdom to share. So thank both of you for being here today for the benefit of my students.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking.
Well,
Yes,
thank you
right.
again. So I think we agreed you guys will both share a lot, but we'll start with Cindy Anderson on the right, because you were a business leader before you
Yes.
became an entrepreneur. And we talk a lot in our class about what are ways that people can find entrepreneurial ventures.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up starting your own business?
Sure. Well, I never expected that I would become quickly in my 30s a leader in telecommunications and utilities, running at one point a $1.8 billion sector for a Fortune 100 company.
Wow.
And so I've had a lot of experience, and in that pathway, as a product and marketing executive, I did a lot with strategy, worked with almost every major consultancy. And when I moved to Phoenix and found a few years later that I didn't want to keep moving around the country, I decided to stop and started my own consultancy. And folks would just say, "Oh my gosh, you do the best business plans. You do great business plans." And it's like, really? Business plans? It's a lot. But I was making a difference. So I started a consultancy that grew from helping business leaders figure out what it was that they wanted to do. And I realized quickly that my experience was something in Fortune 100 that particularly small and medium-sized businesses, they don't have access to that level of thinking or expertise or coaching or leadership. And I found I could really make a difference. So
Beautiful.
I started my own company.
And we talk a lot in our class that what's the number one way that people find business ideas. And that was it for you. You were working in an industry. You were actually very successful. And like anyone who works in an industry for a while, you see things that are done well and things that aren't done well. And the other main thing is often entrepreneurs, they connect kind of two different sectors or two different disciplines sometimes. Well, they're doing things over here, but it could be applied over here. And that's exactly what you did. You had a lot of the skills for strategic planning, and big companies are big on that. And you were really good at that. But you saw a lot of small companies, they just didn't have it. They didn't have the background. They didn't even know where to start. Thought, wow, I could actually apply this. So you started your own consulting business.
I did, and then I became an expert in startups and small to medium-sized businesses, and eventually the LLC I was doing work under Great Biz Plans. What we were known for was writing business plans that could get funded. And it was sort of the secret sauce that I had, and largely found my clients through referrals. In the franchise sector. So I became a small business expert. And ultimately, when we had, remember the Great Recession, when we had the TARP review
2009-ish?
Committee? Yeah, I actually testified before Congress on behalf of small businesses and what our country was doing to them, not necessarily what our SBA was doing for them.
The Small Business Administration wasn't helping, and so you helped encourage the government to give more support to small businesses.
Yes, I did, and I sat right at that testimony table next to bankers that had referred business to me for years, and I told it like it was, and they were shocked that I was going to speak the truth in love, but that's what we do.
Fantastic. Yeah, I tell my students it's often very difficult to get a loan for a startup. So I don't know if you want to discuss that. We didn't talk about that earlier.
I have a lot of expertise. My clients, like 93-ish% of them got loans versus only a third of people that apply through the SBA get an SBA loan. And about in the low 90% of my clients that wanted an SBA loan got one. And it's because of the plan, and it's because of how it was presented, and it was because they didn't go it alone. I helped coach them and help them pick a lender, not giving away, any numbers or anything until they actually picked a lender, how to shop a lender. And then we would do the plan. They would bring the plan into the lender. And then I would sort of play good cop, bad cop, where I would call and say, "So, Ron, I understand that you just got, some paperwork from Cafe Catalyst. How can I help?" And well, how can you help? Yeah, my name is on the plan, and I've been working with Ron for about the last 6 months or so to help him figure out how he's going to be super successful. I know that your bank doesn't necessarily lend to fill in the blank sector.
Right.
And because I've done a little research. So how comfortable are you with that? are you really thinking that? And so putting myself on the same side of the table when it was my client that I was advocating for.
Nice.
So, again, not going alone.
And just to be clear, I think the SBA, Small Business Administration, federal government, they don't actually issue loans, but they will back loans from private banks.
And all banks are following the SBA's guidelines.
Okay.
And so they have loan packagers. They work through state business development centers, which is not necessarily the best thing for the small business owner that really wants to land a loan. So it's really understanding who's looking for what and how can I package my idea, my company, my business, my passion in a way that, first of all, does make sense and then presents in a way that makes sense.
So how long were you doing that, Cindy?
Probably 12, 15 years.
And then how did you end up meeting this lady, Cynthia?
Well, when we were first starting our businesses, when we were both coming out of corporate America, we were at Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce meeting and had a common networking partner that introduced us, and you pick it up from there.
Yeah, I had just started my business, and it was probably my first event that I went to, and Dave was our contact for networking, so it was like a fast networking event.
If I could just interject quickly, because you told me before we turned the camera that you were not a natural networker. You used to be kind of very quiet and introverted. And now everyone I know who knows you says you're like the world's best networker. So
amazing.
anyone listening to this who says, well, I'm just an introvert, because I hear I'm a natural introvert. When I take the Myers-Briggs test, you can come out of your shell and you can actually not just be good at it, but enjoy it. And anybody just hanging around you can see you enjoy interacting with people. So I don't want to take all of the time, but for context, this was your first networking event. You weren't comfortable at first with networking, so can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, well, I guess because I came from sales, so I learned through my sales career in corporate America that I had to be, connected to people.
Right.
And so I became very comfortable, and my mother was like a natural networker, I think, and I just grew up in that environment, so I was able to feel comfortable. But really in corporate, you don't necessarily have that time and effort externally to network with people. So as a new business owner, that was a critical juncture and a critical vehicle to connect with people and be able to build relationships.
So this was your first networking event at the Chamber of Commerce to meet people, and you had to meet this wonderful lady.
Cindy and I met each other.
She had a booth and she said, "Hey, can you share this with me?" And it's like, "Oh, heck yeah!" It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. But we both learned from each other and really matured over the years. And honestly, if there's one concept that I could leave you with, it would be don't go it alone. The basics that you know, what you know how to do in life. So back to the great speech that was make your bed every day. I mean, it's those basics. When you will fall down, you must get yourself up. Don't go it alone. So not only as business peers, but ultimately as business partners, and now as best friends, Cynthia has and is probably one of the best gifts that I have ever been given. She speaks into my life, and she has permission to speak into my life, into my business and professional life, my personal life, what's going on in terms of how we're doing things together. And it really is one of those relationships where we sharpen one another and really have figured out how to
lift
blend
each other up.
and blend our assets.
Beautiful. I found that to be true as well, that people have met either through business contacts or even in school and college.
Yes.
Critical.
Not sitting next to the same person every time in class, but actually getting to know people. Now 40 years later, they're some of my best friends. Even though some of them are all over the world, we still talk, we still help each other. It's amazing. So you guys were at a networking event, and were you forced to talk to each other then, or you just started chatting?
No, we just actually Dave suggested it. Dave, the networking guy, was actually one of my clients. I was helping him build his business.
Okay.
And he said, you need to know, a networking guy, of course, you need to know Cynthia. And Cynthia, you need to spend some time with Cindy. And so immediately we were like, yeah, this big event's coming up, and she was going to do a booth, and so she asked me to join her in the booth, and we, split the costs, and we became alliance partners. And so having an alliance partner, someone that specializes in something that meets the need of your business and your customers in a way that you can package things together, almost a co-referral partner, supplier, We've done that for years.
Fantastic.
Decades.
Yeah.
Okay, so you both kind of had consulting type businesses at this time? All right. And where did it go from there? Because you've done a lot together over the years.
Yeah, I think, well, kind of, would you like me to tell a little bit about how I started
Sure, I'd
from
love
the
to hear
business and then kind of bringing it together? So, like Cindy, I was a corporate executive, and I had a different path of when I started my business. I was the only female executive at a high-tech company, and my husband and I decided that we wanted to be parents, and so we adopted twin girls from China, our biggest blessing.
And they're beautiful. They're 20-something now,
they're
right?
22 now.
Yeah.
Graduated from college, in fact. Thank God. Thank God.
Like just
It's
this month,
a couple
right?
weeks ago. Yeah. So they when I came back from China, about a week or two later, I was on family leave, and my company called me in and said, "Hey, we want to touch base with you and get up to date," and they laid me off from my job.
Oh my gosh.
And so, the first day is always traumatic, you're angry, and then the next day was, thank God. I think I always was an entrepreneur caught in a corporate world. And
so you have a crisis, just to be clear.
It was a
You just
crisis.
adopted 2 children, 2 more mouths to feed, and you just lost your income, which was a total blindside. You didn't think going to China to pick up these kids was going to cause you to lose your job, but it did.
It did.
And now what do you do? So this
And
is a
now
situation a lot of people find them in. It's like, I never expected
Exactly.
to the world collapse on me, but now I've got to do something.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So, thank goodness I was, I came from a sales background, running high performance sales organizations in corporate America, and became an executive, and so was very successful, but was able to use my sales and networking skills then to reach out and say, hey, I need to start my own business. What should I do? Like Cindy, leverage your skills. Right. So I became a consultant who was really a sales leadership expert. Right. And so I would go to companies and very quickly, thank God, as I am a very Christ-centered leader and company owner, I focused on reaching out to just the few people that I knew to get introductions. And within less than 30 days, I was able to find my first client, and then she introduced me to my second client, and I had 2 full-time clients for about a year or 2 years straight. So my business kind of just exploded, thank God. But
mostly through word of mouth, mostly just through recommendations.
Networking and word of mouth.
There you go.
Referrals. So
which is usually
it
the
was
best way.
critical. It was always the best way. So that's, so the first kind of portion of my business was really sales consulting, leadership, and coaching the CEOs on how to develop structure in their sales organizations, on compensation plans, how to hire the right people, how to learn how to sell, which is very different, how to sell by problem solving and giving first.
How to hire the right, I'm sorry to interrupt, how to hire the right people is a whole nother conversation. But I want to go there for a second because I believe as a small business owner, that's the most important thing you do. And the second most important thing you do is fire people, which is gut-wrenching. So if you do number 1 really well, you'll have to do number 2 less often.
Or never.
Do you have any, and either one of you, any words of wisdom? It's very hard, especially in this economy.
Start with being the right leader. You have to be a values-based, high-integrity, integrated leader. Those values matter. Your leadership, you don't want to sell out and take the wrong person or people in your team, and then you don't want to just let them languish. You need to really manage, lead, know your stuff, and make sure that you have purpose. You're headed in the right direction together, and then, to use one of Cynthia's favorite words, you pivot often.
But if I, and I completely agree with that, 100%. But what I say to people and what I try to practice is I wouldn't sit across the table from you on a first interview and say, here's a list of my values. Do you agree with them? Because this person wants a job.
You just walk them out.
So you live it. But how do you determine whether they share those values? Other than just saying, do you share these values?
Asking the right questions.
Asking the right questions.
Okay. I told you it's going to be a whole discussion, but if you could take a minute or two.
I think that, I think having a plan, like we both do, and I learned very much from Cindy about planning, but, having a profile of the ideal candidate, what questions to ask them and how to interact and have a whole process, not only in the interviewing and vetting process, but then once you select the person, a clear onboarding plan. So the interview questions are critical, and I would say a key thing to be prepared for if you're interviewing people is not only to ask them the questions. For example, one is in sales, what is your sales process? So you can have a candidate who can prepare and say, first you do this, first you do this, first you do this.
Yes.
So you ask that question, and then at the end, then you actually do a role play.
Okay.
So that has been a winning strategy forever and ever and ever, because you have somebody who can prepare for part of it, but then in real life, you see how do they act under stress and have to role play, and are they actually in integrity with saying and doing what they said they told you earlier.
Do they know in advance that they're going to have to do a role play? They don't. Okay.
And
so they do it on the spot.
I do that exact same thing in a different flavor, not in sales. Currently, I'm running a medical simulation center, and so we have live cases that everyone from a technician to an entry-level program coordinator, or an admin, everyone has an exercise that they go through. But it's really important to ask the kinds of questions, including, can you tell us about a time where you had conflict? And you had conflict with a boss or a superior or someone that you were working with. How did you handle that? What was your role in it? And how was it resolved? Right. What did you learn from that? Tell me about how comfortable are you with? And so it's just asking questions about the person. And then if it's a highly technical position, you can get into some of the technical elements of it. And the most important thing is, have you figured out the right 4 to 6 questions to ask in a pre-screening interview before you actually meet with them face-to-face, just a phone interview?
Good.
And then in addition to that, how are we going to spend 45 minutes together? So one thing that we actually do in the simulation center, after we interview, because it's a 33,000 square foot, are you kidding me, center. So it really is. So some of the junior members take the candidate on a tour, and the candidates think that they're finished with the interview. And the junior candidates don't have a vote, but they have a voice, and that's one of my mantras. Almost everyone gets a voice, and almost everyone gets a vote. And we've had a couple of people come back and knock on the door and say, look, I know I don't get a vote on this, but hard pass this person. And it's like, whoa, what happened? Whether it was their attitude or, you got that problem, I could get that solved in 2 weeks. That kind of non-fit with the team culture.
Great.
So it's things like that you can work in that are normal. You want to have someone shown around. You don't need to be doing that. Someone else can be doing that and giving you feedback. So it's just be intentional. Yeah.
Zappos, by the way, which is famous for hiring, they do something very similar to that, where they actually have a driver that takes them back somewhere, and then before they make a final decision, they ask, how did they treat you? Because the person thinks, well, this driver is just a not important person. So if they're rude to them, they say, it doesn't matter how well the rest of the day went. We don't want that person on our team, because we're all about supporting each other, valuing every person. So perfect. Thank you for sharing that.
So those are just. But Cynthia's thing is questions. She makes very few statements. She is always asking questions.
Good.
My mantra, ask, don't tell, which goes very well with sales, of course.
And leadership.
Critical, and leadership.
So I have to say, this is great, and we're 18 minutes in, so, and we can go a little over 30 minutes if we need to, but we could probably go for hours. But you've already touched on this, but one of the most important things for me in doing these interviews is, obviously you both are extremely successful, but you've had failures. Can you tell us, you don't have to go into gory details if you don't want to. You already shared a little bit about what you got fired, but how did you deal with failure? Other than the one wonderful example you gave, Cynthia, what are some setbacks or unexpected things that happened that looked like, oh, this is going to ruin it? And then how did you deal with that? What did you learn from it, and how did you actually turn that into a win? Which I know, Cindy, that's one of your favorite phrases. What's the win?
How do we win?
Yeah, how do we turn it into a win?
I'll go first, because I've had, Cynthia spoke to one of hers, but during the Great Recession in 2008, I had six employees, and then I had a couple of other contractors. 4 of those were family members. and I lost everything. When the economy dried up, I had a business that was industry agnostic, geographically agnostic. It didn't matter. There was always someone that was looking to start or grow a business.
Yeah.
And I've written over 2,000 business plans for companies all over the globe.
Incredible.
Who knew that, in certain parts of India that having a driver that goes and picks people up is a part of the business plan, or they don't come to work.
Oh, wow.
You learn those things. Anyway, so I lost everything and had to take it down to where it was just me. And I was back to being a solopreneur again. And so creating something that isn't just buying myself a job, well, in that environment, I needed to buy myself a job. In the end, I ended up losing my house, where I had 60% equity in my house.
Oh.
It was just a very, very dark time when the economy literally shut down. And as some of your students are hearing this, they may be experiencing a lot of that pushback themselves. And so focusing on what can I do, what assets do I have, and what does a win look like for me? I actually called up some of my clients, and after a month of sending out over 300 resumes, I was offered a executive level position with Dial, who's no longer headquartered here.
Dial, like Dial soap? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And they brought me in, and there was a luncheon, and it's like, where's the offer letter? When do I start? And every day, every third day, when do I start? When do I start? This went on for like 4 weeks.
Oh my.
And never got my job. So I needed to pivot, and digging myself out of the ditch mentally and emotionally, and there was nothing for me to do at home. And so I had contacts, I had prior clients, and I called them up and I said, you know what? Here's the thing. I'm just as vested in your business and in your success as I was before. What I'd love to come in for 4 hours, work with you and your team. You buy the iced tea, I pay for the morning, that's it. And they're like, oh no, we couldn't do that. Well, it's like, I'm going crazy. Ron, help a girl out. And it was like, okay. And they'd gather their team together, and we'd work to solve business problems.
Wow.
And I probably did that 2 to 3 days a week.
And how did you find these companies?
Those were people that I'd worked with before.
Previously, okay.
Clients.
But they couldn't afford to pay you now because of the recession.
Couldn't
so you would do it
afford
basically for free.
And their businesses were shrinking, and they were in the battle themselves.
Okay, got it.
Cutting their workforce in half, and it's like, I don't even know if I want to bring in that partner because he might not be here next week.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever you think. I'm glad to, we can work on this or this or this, the other things that I think I know about your business or your industry. So offering your services in a way that is truly valued by others. And what was in it for me was that I wasn't just sitting there waiting for something to happen, applying for more jobs that weren't going to materialize. And so I was actually delivering value. And then fairly quickly, things started to pick up again. And I got some small clients, and was making my way through.
Did you get referrals then from these companies?
Oh, yes.
Which is in itself is very valuable.
It was, and several of the, when you start to make a difference. So one of them was a real estate company based out of Chandler, Arizona, and that was growing tremendously. I completely reframed their business and then became a part of the corporate executive leadership team.
Wow.
So it doesn't take long. You just need to not sit and idle. What value do I have that I can deliver, even if it's this big,
in a
versus
nutshell.
what I've been doing? So going back to that question, Ron, that you asked me about, so where do you start? I always start with, what does a win look like? And for me, the win was, do I still have it? And then getting into strategy, I always start with a SWOT. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the leverage from the strengths and opportunities, shoring up the business implications of the weaknesses and the threats, and knowing that I can do something about the internal things I have.
Which are strengths and weaknesses, are the internal.
Yes, exactly. And so what am I doing with that and to that, and not just buying myself a job, but creating something scalable that is going to deliver value, and where others will accept and receive that value, and then value exchange is profit.
Beautiful. Would you like to share?
Well, in talking about the first part of my the first company I started after I was laid off was MJC Solutions, and it was the sales consulting. And I would say I really learned from Cindy and went through those decades of really, I bought myself a job.
Yeah.
So I worked for these clients and I grew their businesses, but it was really, I was part of their team and they always wanted me to come work there. And so that was just not scalable. And so again, during the Great Recession, one of my clients asked me if I would come and work there permanently, and I decided to do that because I didn't have other clients, and so I did. But that really reinforced, I need to build value. I need to learn what I did in the first part of my first company to be able to pivot as time went on, which I did. And I learned as I relaunched a company called Cafe Catalyst, which is my current business, which is a leadership development, training and coaching program and company. It's Christ-centered. And I focus now on a particular, I had a plan. I had a strategy to focus on a particular industry, which I did not do before. So kind of many of the things that Cindy taught her clients, I learned and leveraged and was able to launch my company again almost 10 years ago. So, and I've had clients since that time now that I've been working with for years.
Are your clients centered in a certain industry, or are they across a lot?
Right now, so as we launched because I did start my business by becoming a Vistage coach, which is really a advisory board for companies. And so it's CEOs coming together for boards. So I learned through that business, the company had training and coaching for the Vistage chairs, which I was. And then your job was to go to your network and build groups of CEOs or executives.
So CEOs from different companies would come together and they'd share ideas.
And they'd share ideas and ask the hard questions, things that Cindy talked about earlier that we do for each other. They do for each other, but you're a trained coach and facilitator and speakers and so forth. So much of what I learned was the concept of how do you do this within, to help companies grow. And so we started to work on one client together, University of Arizona, where Cindy is, to do their business strategy to help them. University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix.
Huge.
They needed to get certified again, or what is it called?
Yeah, they needed to get accredited. Separately accredited. It's a brand new college of medicine.
Not an easy process.
Except we made it easy.
We did it.
You did?
We
Wow.
did make it easy.
Yeah, it was fun too.
It was really fun.
Now, are you thinking about going to other colleges and doing it for them? Or?
Actually, I have been relied upon as now running a medical simulation center. They talked me into giving up my consultancy and
they hired
work.
you.
Which was the absolute right answer for me.
Okay.
I'm retirement eligible, and it's just this season of my life is really fun. And it's again pivoting. As a leader, I am a better leader now than I ever was with all the fancy titles and worldwide this and that. I am making a difference every single day. Ron, if you could see my office, every birthday, there's hearts and they write things on them, like they're learning from me. The most important things. One of them, they put something in my plant one day and it said, with a heart on it, that I have never heard you say a foul word. And it's like really? I'm not that perfect. But there's, that the door is always open. And I really lead by coming underneath them and having more influence. And most of my team is probably the age of most of your students.
Right.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to lead someone that's a Gen Zer who's done everything in a group. And that group think is not necessarily what's needed in every environment. And allowing them the freedom to kind of untether and retether in a way that makes a difference with very clear objectives, goals, development. So I'm loving what I'm doing. But the point is that you can pivot your business or your career in a different way that leverages who you are in this season.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
We're just under 30 minutes, which went by fast, and we'll go a little over if that's okay. I just want to leave it open. Any other words of wisdom, suggestions that you want to leave with students, most of whom either have businesses or are very serious about starting businesses? Anything else you'd like to share?
Cynthia, speak a little bit about what you do with leadership development. I think that would be helpful.
Well, I think that I was going to kind of bring together some of the things we've talked about networking and leadership. And once I started my first business, leaving a corporate world, really you have to find your tribe. And so I was very lucky pretty quickly that all the people that I talked to said, you really should identify the organization NABO, which is the National Association of Women Business Owners. So I would say that was a pivotal part of my success, not only because it was like-minded business owners that were women, but there was immediate leadership opportunities to serve on the board.
Great.
And I became very involved immediately, and was there for
throughout the
decades. So you built relationships not only with other women business owners, but with corporate partners, and so you built relationships with them, with government leaders, and just the community in general. So it was a wonderful way to build relationships and to build your leadership skills and actually have practical experience that you could bring every day to the table to your business and reflect how you would lead or work with clients to see how effective you could be. So that was very, very, I would encourage each student to identify very strategically what organizations, if they have a specialty or interest, to join those kinds of organizations and build relationships so that you get to find people like Cindy and I who found each other that will help you grow and succeed.
I completely agree. Well said. Okay, Cindy, anything else you'd like to share?
Go for it.
Go for it.
You have it within you to do greatness. Each of us, everybody that woke up this morning, you have a purpose.
Yes.
Live your purpose with intention and with excellence. You're the only you. Be the absolute best you that you can be, in integrity, with purpose, and you can make a difference.
Great.
And Ron, I guess I would say, pivoting off to having your purpose, I would say, for those of you who are believers or maybe not yet believers, but as I focused and made my business Christ-centered for all my clients, and I laugh about it. I'm like, nobody's fired me because of that. But
and these are not Christian companies.
Yeah.
Some of them have some Christian leaders, but they're not necessarily. But I would just say living out your faith in your business and not being fearless about it. My business has exploded and grown because it glorifies God. And I would just say don't listen necessarily to others, but really be that authentic person. And if you are, being that servant leader and serving others, whether it's your clients or those you coach or lead or teach or have as your employees, it makes not only a difference today, but an eternal difference.
Yeah. And thank you. That's beautiful. And we often talk about core values in the course, and it's so important.
Right.
What your core values are. Other people might not agree with them, but if you know what your core values are, and for me the definition of a core value is it's something you're not going to compromise on.
That's right.
So actually you can't have too many. If you have 75 core values, you're going to be like a stick in the mud and you can't move any part. Pivoting is, I see it almost like in basketball, that one foot has to be planted. That's your core value. That one's not moving, but the rest you have to move and adapt, and that's what pivoting is. But you have to have that anchor, because if you don't, you'll be blown away. When the waves come and the storms come, you will be blown away, and nobody will trust you, because who are you? But even if they don't agree with who you are, and Patrick Lencioni, who writes, I don't know if we didn't talk about, but he even says, if people know what your values are, they're much more likely to go with you, even if they don't totally agree with the decision, but at least they know they can trust where you're coming from. They're not going to pull a fast one. Or going over to Jim Collins, has done all of this thing. He says great leadership is selecting great people. You don't even have to motivate and manage them. But then that's part one, but you often don't hear part two. He says, don't do all the stupid things that leaders do to demotivate them, which is basically violating core values. I promise you this, and then, oh no, we're not, stabbing you in the back and all. Don't do it. If they can trust you, even if they don't completely agree with all of your values, although if they can't agree with your values, that's really good. they will trust you and they'll go with you. At least they'll know where you're coming from, and you're not going to stab them in the back.
And trust is two components, and two only, as Covey teaches in Speed of Trust: character and competence.
Yes.
So if you are not trusting someone, is it their character, their willingness, and ability to do what their competence is or is not? They're not able. So one is a willingness and the other one is an ability. So others that aren't trusting you, you need to work really hard on your character and your competence in every relationship, personal and professional, to be trustworthy, because that's the thread that holds it together.
Well, and just to pick up that first conversation about recruiting,
yes,
and getting, so that alignment of values really,
Yes.
do they have both of those things in that trust?
Yeah.
And are they aligned with your core values as an organization and as a leader? And if they're not, that's the good place to part, so that you don't have to go down that ugly path.
Yeah.
So,
and again, as Patrick Lencioni says, conflict is inevitable.
Yes.
I'm sure you don't have to share it here on video, but I'm sure you had some pretty heated conversations.
Have.
But he says, if you know
Yes.
if you know you can trust where the other person's coming from, even if you don't agree, you can actually be very transparent and say, I think this is a bad idea, because never attacking the person, personally, that's destructive. But I can say, Cynthia, I love you and all, but this, I was at another organization, they tried this, and here's what happened, it blew up. And you don't then take that personally, and you say, Ron, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
That's exactly what she says.
and Lencioni will say, in an organization when that happens, if people can really feel that they can transparently reflect, indicate what they believe, what their views are, even if the management goes in a different direction, people will go along with it because they felt they were heard, they felt they were respected, and they felt that all the issues were laid on the table. Yeah. And so it's so important to know what the core values are, to have that underlying trust. Then we can engage in creative conflict. Right. It's like a good marriage. Yeah. A good marriage, people are going to argue, but it's actually healthy because I don't have eyes in the back of my head. You can see what's behind me. I can't see what's behind you. It's not that you're smarter than me. You just see things I don't see. I see things you don't see. If we can lay all that on the table, we'll make much better decisions. Much better. But if I'm afraid and I need to hold back and not share everything because you're going to hurt me if I disagree with you, then we have a very unhealthy organization.
Yeah. Very. So that is critical to make sure you're building that. You see that with your employees and with your clients, because otherwise it can be a very negative experience. But stay in alignment, be clear, and be focused.
Good.
And stay externally focused as well. Focus on your customers. You never go wrong if you're focused on the market and you're focused on your customers instead of focused on what you do and don't have, or what you are or aren't willing or able to do. Just stay focused, and that value will be there.
Perfect.
And that success will be there.
And sorry, we always pivot with each
we
other.
Do.
But one of the things what I talked about earlier, and networking, as you said, Ron, was so critical.
Yeah.
But I would say for my life in sales and then in networking as a business owner, when you go meet with other people, the focus is on others as it is with servant leadership.
Yes.
So when you go to an event or you sit next to somebody new in your class or you meet a potential client, the first thing you want to ask is, how can I help you?
Yeah.
So you're focused on them, focused on what the problem is, 100%. And you don't want to show up and throw up about yourself or your company.
Yeah.
And you mean it when you say, how can I help you? You actually mean it.
You mean it.
Yeah.
It's got to be genuine.
It's all about them.
And you deliver, you follow up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Really key.
We could go on forever.
I know, this is fun.
So a couple of years ago, I had Andrew Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And it's almost 100 years old, and it's very
Yes.
my students have to pick one book, and they often pick that one and love it. And then Guy Kawasaki, you might know, who is the marketing manager for. He says default to yes, meaning when you meet somebody, it's like, what can I do for you? And I mean it, because we know the world is filled with people that are all about themselves. Everybody who's listening to this video, you encounter people like that all the time. You can tell that they're interested in getting something from you, and it's so refreshing when you meet somebody. This person actually is interested in me and wants to help me if they can, and they mean it. And we're just kind of like bees to honey. We're drawn to those people because it's refreshing and it's so uncommon.
That's
sadly.
this girl right here.
So people love you guys. We've gone almost 40 minutes. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a privilege.
Really
God
appreciate
bless
you both.
Thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to turn off the video, but thank you so much.